Let's jump into today's topic. And the topic is dentistry a profession or an industry? So it is an awesome topic. And I think, Gary, it's both. And I'll tell you why I think that way. And I would love to hear your thoughts. I think the last time I checked, it was a $130 billion industry, one of the larger industries within healthcare. Healthcare as a whole in the US is a $4 trillion industry. And of course, most of us need a dentist for the rest of our lives, right? Hopefully the ones who care about health. And we go to the dentist religiously, and we get our kids to brush their teeth and go to the dentist religiously, and it becomes part of something we do, as part of healthy living. So I think in that sense, it is an industry. It is like, stable. On the other hand, it is also a profession, right? I can't become a dentist. You have to, you know, ace your university and then get into dental school, which is not easy, and you have to ace that, and then you have to work for somebody else, learn the craft, continue with the CE and the ongoing education. So it's a profession, just like any other profession, any other healthcare profession. It is a profession that takes a lot of time and effort, not just upfront, but also on an ongoing basis to be allowed, or to be, to get the credentials to practice dentistry. So what's your take, Gary?
Well, let me give you the backstory to why I selected this topic for this Less Insurance Dependence podcast. Naren and I are both involved in a number of large dentist Facebook groups. Facebook has become a very useful forum, or at least the groups have become a useful forum for debate and discussion, within our profession. And I love the way that Facebook requires you to be transparent. You have to be who you are. You have to give your name, your actual name, and you have to make comments, from your genuine self. You can't hide behind a screen name. And so because of that, I think the group, the dental groups can be a very useful place to debate and bounce around different topics. And Naren and I are both involved in a number of those. And recently, I got involved in a wonderful discussion in a particular Facebook group about is dentistry a profession or an industry? And I think the words that we use are important. I think they're very important. They kind of they allow us to create a mindset and create a perspective. And we may agree to disagree on this one, Naren, because I have a different opinion. I absolutely believe that dentistry is a profession, not an industry. And it was interesting because in this particular thread, on this large Facebook group, very large Facebook group, over 45,000 members. And in this particular group, there were mixed opinions about it. Some people said, who cares? It doesn't matter what it is. It's business. And I guess at some level, that's it. But I do believe that the words that we use are very important. For example, I like to think of the people we work with as a team as opposed to staff. I like to jokingly say staff is an infection. Wait a minute, you spell that differently. Staff is an infection, or it's a stick, that shepherds carry. And team just implies something completely different. And I'll give you a really fundamental difference of words, Naren. Think about some of the things we ask our patients to do in the dental office. We can ask them to rinse, or we can ask them to spit. Which word would we prefer to use? We're going to ask them to rinse. So yes. I think the words that we use are very important. And I think industry implies that, it's this massive enterprise. We're simply a grain of sand on the beach, involved in this massive industry. I'll give you a good example of where the word industry, I think, accurately describes the business. The auto manufacturing industry. That's an industry.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree, Naren?
I would agree.
Yeah, the auto manufacturing industry. Those are big factories. There's thousands of people that work inside of them. And now, certainly, some of the people that work in the auto manufacturing industry are absolutely professionals. Absolutely. But there used to be a lot more professionals in the auto manufacturing industry. A lot of things used to be done by hand. For example, welding was something that, if we go back in time, was done in hand. And I believe that welders are absolute professionals, in terms of,
Right.
of what they do. Today, most of those jobs have been taken over by what?
Uh, Technology, I mean, robots and all kinds of,
Machines, robots.
yeah, machines. Yeah.
They've been taken over by machines.
Yeah.
Another term that the insurance industry, and I'm using that term specifically, I think insurance is absolutely an industry. It is, it is the definition of industry. A term that they have kind of foisted upon us is provider.
Mm.
Provider.
Yeah. You're not a doctor anymore. You're a
No,
provider.
not a doctor, not a doctor. You're
Yeah.
a provider. Like
Yeah.
many other providers, you're just one of many. You're replaceable.
Hairstylist is a provider,
Yeah, you're a provider.
Yeah, provider. Yeah. Exactly.
And I'd like to suggest that there's a difference between being a caregiver and a doctor than being a provider. Yeah.
Right.
So I want you to think about this for a minute. And again, I think this is more than just an academic debate, because as I've over 44 years now been involved in our wonderful profession, I'm going to keep using that word profession. As I've been involved for over 44 years in this wonderful profession, I noticed that there are different styles of practice. There are many different styles of practice. Naren, you've had experience with a lot of practices, and certainly within your client base at Equa, you have clients all over the North America, primarily in the U.S. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is
Uh,
correct.
and you have lots of different styles of practices. And I think you've noticed some differences as you're in your work with them. I think you've noticed some differences. That be
Right.
accurate?
That is accurate. Get it.
But I've noticed that if we describe it kind of simply, think of a spectrum, think of a linear, a line, a horizontal line in front of us. And on one side, we have as a style of practice, a transactional practice. And on the
Right.
other side, we have a relationship-driven practice.
Correct.
Now, the truth is, I don't think any practice is purely one or the other.
Mhm.
It lies somewhere in between. What would a purely transactional practice look like? Purely transactional. Well, people just walk in, have some provider do the care, and then they leave.
Right.
Well,
Right.
I don't believe that any practice really, succumbs to that level, entirely. And relationship driven, clearly on the other side of the spectrum, would imply that practice, we know our patients, we know their names, we know their spouse's name, we know their kids' name, we know their hobbies, we know their interests, we know their dental story, we know their broader healthcare situation in terms of what their overall health is. That would define more like relationship driven. So,
Right.
as an exercise, as you're listening to this, doctors, I would like you to think about, draw that line, draw that horizontal line, and put a mark where you think you are. Where you think you are. Are you right in the middle? Are you partly transactional and partly relationship driven? Where are you? Where are you? Are you much more transactional based, or are you much more relationship driven? Where are you in that spectrum? And where would you like to be? So put where you think you are. This is very subjective. I wish I could be really objective. I wish there was a way to measure this, Naren.
Right.
And there is. I'm going to show you a partial way to measure it. There is a way. But put a mark where you are on that spectrum from being transactional. And transactional would be you're an industry, to
Right.
being relationship driven, you're a profession. And where are you in that? And where would you like to be? Ideally, where would you like to be? If the world was perfect, where would you place yourself? And then
Right.
maybe answer the question, what would you have to do to get there? What would you have to do to get there?